My name is Ethan. On a night when the blood moon hung low and heavy in the sky, casting an eerie crimson glow over the towering redwoods of Redwood National Park, I stumbled upon a scene that felt ripped from the pages of a long-forgotten myth. In a secluded glade, hidden from the eyes of the world, cloaked figures swirled in an intricate dance around a makeshift altar, their chants rising like whispers of the wind, calling forth a forgotten goddess. The sight sent a shiver down my spine. I had always believed that nature was a sanctuary, but that night it revealed its darker underbelly. Since becoming a park ranger, I had learned to listen to the earth's secrets, to feel the pulse of the forest beneath my feet. The stories I'd heard around campfires, tales of ancient spirits and rituals meant to honor the land, had been mere folklore to me, cautionary tales designed to instill respect for the wild. Yet, as the blood moon reached its zenith, I realized that some legends are rooted in truths that lie beyond the grasp of logic and reason. The very air felt charged with a foreboding energy, as if the woods themselves were holding their breath, waiting for something to unfold. Driven by a mix of curiosity and an innate duty to protect this sacred ground, I crept closer, my heart racing. The symbols etched into the earth glowed faintly, resonating with an energy that felt both alluring and terrifying. Each utterance from the figures seemed to pull at the fabric of reality, suggesting they were attempting to forge a connection with the goddess of the forgotten, a being whose name had been lost to time, yet whose presence felt all too real amidst the shifting shadows of the trees. What are they summoning? I wondered, a chill creeping over me. If this ritual continued, what would it awaken? The weight of my dilemma pressed heavily upon me. Should I intervene and risk incurring the wrath of forces that had slumbered for centuries? Or should I stand back and allow something sinister to unfold, potentially disrupting the delicate balance of the forest? My mind raced with the implications of both choices, each fraught with danger. The flicker of torchlight illuminated the faces of the participants, their expressions hidden beneath hoods, but I could sense their fervor, their desperation. They were seeking something far beyond their understanding, and I could feel the weight of their intentions pressing upon the very ground I stood on. The woods, once my refuge, now felt alive with a palpable tension. I could hear the rustling of leaves, the distant call of a nightbird, but it all felt charged with an energy that was unfamiliar. It was as if the trees themselves were watching, judging, awaiting my next move. I had faced countless storms in my time as a ranger, but this was different. This was a storm of the soul, a confrontation with the very essence of nature's hidden truths. As I grappled with my decision, the moon's light flickered ominously, casting long shadows that danced along the forest floor. I realized then that the night was far from over, and the true nature of the ritual was yet to be revealed. But when night fell, something inexplicable happened. I stood there, rooted in place, my breath shallow and quick. The chanting grew, louder, a rhythmic pulse that seemed to sync with the beating of my own heart. It was as if the very fabric of the forest vibrated with their voices, drawing me closer into the web they were weaving. Panic coursed through me. I had to make a choice, but every instinct screamed at me to flee. Just as I turned to retreat, a figure broke away from the circle, striding toward me with purpose. "Ethan!" The voice sliced through the tension like a knife. I recognized it instantly. It was Clara, another ranger from the park, her eyes wide with a mix of fear and determination. "You shouldn't be here," she hissed, glancing back at the ritual. "You need to leave, now." "Clara, what's happening?" I demanded, my voice barely above a whisper. I felt the weight of her urgency, but the pull of the scene before me was overwhelming. The way she'd rushed toward me, the panic in her eyes, ignited a spark of dread in my chest. "I don't know," she replied, shaking her head, "but I overheard them earlier. They believe they can awaken the goddess of the forest, and if they succeed—" Her voice trailed off, and the unspoken dread hung thick in the air. You have to help me stop them, Ethan. This isn't just some folklore. They're playing with forces they don't understand. A shiver ran down my spine. I could feel the tension in her posture, the way her hands trembled slightly as she spoke. She was scared, but her resolve was palpable. What do you mean? I asked, desperate for clarity. What will happen if they succeed? Legend says she'll bring chaos and destruction to the land. The balance will be shattered and the forest will turn against us, Clara said, her voice firming. We've seen signs. Animals acting strangely, plants wilting overnight. It's all connected, Ethan. If we don't stop this, the forest won't be our sanctuary anymore. It will become a nightmare. Clara's words resonated deep within me, echoing the concerns I had been wrestling with since I arrived. I had always felt a connection to this land, a sense of duty to protect it. But now, I was faced with a reality that threatened to unravel everything I believed in. The weight of that responsibility bore down on my shoulders, and I knew I couldn't stand idly by. Okay, let's do this, I said, feeling a surge of determination. But how? We can't just barge in there. They're already deep into the ritual. Clara's gaze flickered back toward the cloaked figures. We need to disrupt their focus. If we can break their concentration, it might halt whatever they're trying to summon, she suggested, her voice low and urgent. But we'll need a distraction, something to pull them away from the altar. I nodded, adrenaline flooding my veins as I glanced around. The forest was alive with night sounds, but it felt like it was holding its breath, waiting for the next move. I can create a noise, I said, looking up at the trees. If I climb that ridge, I can make a sound that'll echo down into the glade. It should draw their attention away long enough for us to approach. Clara hesitated, her brow furrowing. It's risky, Ethan. If they catch you, or if the goddess awakens... She bit her lip, fear flashing in her eyes. I can't lose you to this. Her words struck a chord, the emotional weight of our friendship crashing over me like a wave. I had always admired her strength, her fierce dedication to the land. But now I saw the vulnerability she hid beneath her tough exterior. You won't lose me, I assured her, the conviction in my voice surprising even me. We're in this together. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what lay ahead. The night was growing darker, the air crackling with energy as I prepared to face the unknown. As I glanced back one last time at Clara, I could see the worry etched into her features, but also a glimmer of hope. With a nod of resolve, I sprinted toward the ridge, my heart pounding in tandem with the chance, echoing through the trees. As I climbed, I could feel the eyes of the forest upon me, and I wondered if I was truly prepared for what I was about to unleash. But deep down, I knew I had to try. The fate of the forest, and perhaps more, hung in the balance. As I clambered up the ridge, the chanting grew louder, a pulse that resonated deep within me. Each step I took felt like a descent into madness, the air thick with an electric tension. I reached the top and paused, taking in the sprawling forest below, shrouded in shadow, alive with a creeping sense of dread. I steadied myself, ready to create the distraction that Clara and I so desperately needed. But as I looked down into the glade, everything shifted. The figures surrounding the altar seemed to blur and shimmer, their forms twisting as if reality itself was warping. I blinked, convinced my eyes were playing tricks on me. Had I really climbed this ridge, or was I spiraling into some nightmarish vision? I felt a wave of nausea wash over me, but I pushed down. I had to focus. Suddenly, I heard a rustling behind me. I turned, heart racing, to find Clara standing at the base of the ridge, her expression unreadable. "What are you doing?" I shouted down, the wind catching my voice and carrying it away. "I told you to stay back." I couldn't just sit there, she replied, her voice strained. "This is too important. I won't let you do this alone." But as she spoke, her features shifted in the moonlight. I could see something dark, almost otherworldly, lurking behind her eyes. It sent a chill racing down my spine. "Clara?" I called, suddenly unsure of what I was seeing. "Are you all right?" "I'm fine," she snapped, but the edge in her tone sent alarm bells ringing in my head. "Just focus on the plan. You need to get their attention away from the altar." As I turned back to the chanting circle, a wave of doubt crashed over me. The figures had begun to sway, their voices rising in an eerie harmony that resonated deep within the trees. My mind raced, recalling the stories my grandmother used to tell, tales of rangers who vanished into the woods, lured by forces beyond understanding. Had I walked into a trap set long before I arrived? I shook my head, trying to clear the fog. I gripped a nearby branch, ready to create the noise I needed. But then I remembered Clara's words, the urgency in her voice. I had always trusted her, but now I wondered how much I truly knew her. What if she was more entwined in this ritual than she let on? "Clara, wait!" I shouted, my voice breaking. "What do you know about this?" She hesitated, her eyes narrowing, and for a moment I thought I saw a flicker of something dark, something I had never expected from her. "It's not what you think, Ethan. Sometimes the forest calls to those who can hear it. Sometimes it chooses us." A cold realization washed over me. All those years Clara had spoken of a deep connection with the forest, but now I wondered if she had been a part of something far more sinister than just protecting it. Before I could process it further, the chanting reached a fevered pitch, a cacophony that reverberated through the very ground beneath my feet. The figures turned as one, their intentions suddenly clear, and I felt the weight of the forest pressing down on me, suffocating. I had to act and fast, but as I prepared to create my distraction, I caught Clara's gaze, and the depth of her secrets threatened to swallow me whole. I was standing on the edge of a precipice, and I wasn't sure if I was about to save the forest or plunge into its darkest depths. As the chanting reached its climax, the air around me vibrated with a raw energy that felt almost alive. I glanced back at Clara, her silhouette framed by the dim light of the moon, and the strange darkness in her eyes was now unmistakable. My heart raced, and a knot twisted in my stomach. I had to make a choice, and it felt like standing at the edge of a cliff with a churning sea below. "Clara, you need to tell me the truth," I shouted, desperation creeping into my voice. "Are you with them? Have you been part of this all along?" She stepped forward, the shadows deepening around her. "You don't understand, Ethan. This is bigger than you or me. This is about balance, about the forest reclaiming its power. I can't let you ruin everything." The figures below began to chant even louder, their movements synchronized in a hypnotic rhythm. I felt the pull of their energy, a seductive call that beckoned me to join them. My instinct screamed at me to flee, but I couldn't abandon Clara. Not when I was so close to discovering her true allegiance. "Balance?" I scoffed, trying to keep my voice steady, despite the fear clawing at my insides. "This looks more like madness than balance." The moment hung heavy between us, and I could see the struggle in her eyes. The Clara I knew was fading behind something darker, something that yearned for the chaos of the ritual below. "I won't let you interfere," she hissed, and in that instant I realized I might not be able to trust her anymore. With a sudden surge of defiance, I turned my attention back to the figures. I ripped the branch from the ground, its weight comforting in my hands. "If you want a distraction, you're going to get one," I muttered to myself, my mind racing with a plan. I took a deep breath and hurled the branch down into the clearing. It struck the ground with a crack that echoed through the glade. The figures halted, their chanting abruptly silenced as they turned in unison toward the disturbance. I could see their features now, shadowy and indistinct, but the malice in their eyes was undeniable. Clara's expression shifted from anger to fear, and for the first time, I saw the vulnerability beneath her hardened facade. "Ethan, no!" she cried, but it was too late. The distraction had worked, but I could feel the eyes of the forest on me, the weight of its power pressing hard against my chest. I bolted down the ridge, adrenaline coursing through my veins. As I sprinted toward the clearing, I could sense the tension rising. The figures were moving, and I could hear their low growls, a sound that vibrated through the air like an approaching storm. Clara was behind me, caught between the two worlds, and the choice was clear. Either she would stand with me against the dark forces, or she would succumb to them. The moment of truth was upon us, and I had to decide if I would fight for her or against her. The forest, alive with its ancient magic, seemed to hold its breath, waiting for my next move. I could feel the ground shift beneath my feet, the very fabric of reality trembling as I stepped into the eye of the storm. As I plunged into the clearing, the air crackled with tension, my heart pounding in my chest like a war drum. The figures, now clearly defined, were a grotesque assembly of shadows and whispers, their eyes glinting with a predatory hunger. I felt Clara's presence behind me, a wavering thread of connection tethering me to her, but the darkness around her was undeniable. "Stay back!" I shouted at her, the words bursting out in a frantic plea. "This isn't you!" But she hesitated, caught between two worlds, and the figures advanced, their chanting rising again, a chorus of ancient voices weaving through the air like a spell. I raised my hands, instinctively trying to channel whatever remnants of courage I had left. "You don't have to do this," I yelled, my voice cracking. "We can stop this together." With a sudden surge of energy, the figures lunged forward and I braced myself, ready to face whatever they had in store. The first one lunged at me, its shadowy form shifting and coiling like smoke. I sidestepped just in time, and the entity crashed into the ground, sending ripples through the earth. The forest trembled with the power of the ritual, and I could feel the ancient magic thrumming beneath my feet. I turned to Clara, desperation flooding my voice. "You have to fight it. Remember who you are." For a heartbeat, I saw a flicker of recognition in her eyes. But just as quickly, the darkness surged back, drowning out the light. The figures were closing in, their claws reaching out, and I realized I could no longer wait for her. I had to break the cycle. With a primal roar, I charged into the swarm, swinging wildly. The impact of my makeshift weapon met flesh, if it could even be called that. The figures shrieked, their forms dissipating like mist in the morning sun. Each strike felt like I was tearing apart the fabric of their existence. And with every swing, I felt the connection to the forest strengthen, its power surging into me. But the cost was steep. As I fought, tendrils of darkness lashed out, slashing across my arms and face, leaving behind deep, burning scars. I could feel the weight of the forest's magic pressing down on my soul, threatening to consume me. The pain was blinding, and I stumbled, nearly falling as I faced the last of the figures. In a final, desperate act, I focused all my energy, drawing on the remnants of Clara's spirit I still believed in. "This ends now!" I screamed, thrusting the branch forward as if it were a spear. The last figure screeched and exploded into a plume of shadows, scattering into the night. Silence fell, a heavy blanket of calm in the wake of chaos. I stood panting, my body racked with pain, my heart heavy with the weight of what I'd lost. Clara emerged from the shadows, her face pale and haunted. "Ethan," she whispered, tears glistening in her eyes. I couldn't stop it. I almost lost myself. "But you're here now," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "We can still fight this together." Yet, as relief washed over me, I noticed the glade around us. The trees seemed to whisper, the air thick with unsolved mysteries. A haunting melody played in the distance, a reminder that the forest was alive and restless, its secrets still lurking in the shadows. I glanced at Clara, who seemed lost in thought, her face pale and shaken. "What if they come back?" she murmured, her voice trembling. "What if this wasn't just a one-time thing?" Before I could respond, a low growl emanated from the depths of the woods, sending shivers down my spine. The forest was not done with us yet, and as I looked back at Clara, I realized the true battle was just beginning. The scars on my body throbbed, and the scars on my soul felt even deeper. The connection between us, forged in darkness, now hung in the balance, a fragile thread waiting to be tested. The night was still young, and the forest, with all its secrets, was watching. I turned to Clara, my heart racing, but the growl from the depths of the woods sent a chill through my spine. "What if we can't stop it?" she whispered, her eyes wide with fear. The shadows around us seemed to pulse, as if the forest itself were echoing her doubts. I felt the weight of my own insecurities pressing down on me, the realization that perhaps I was not strong enough to protect her or myself. But then, as if summoned by my thoughts, more figures began to emerge from the underbrush, their forms coalescing into the grotesque shapes I had fought against. Each one bore the faces of my worst fears, the darkness I had felt creeping into my soul, the betrayal of a friend, the loss of Clara, to the very evil I had battled. My heart seized, and I realized that this was no mere skirmish. It was the manifestation of everything I dreaded. "No!" I screamed, stepping back as they closed in, the chanting growing louder, more insistent. Clara's hand slipped from mine, and I felt her spirit fracture as she was pulled into the shadows. I lunged for her, but the darkness consumed her, and in that moment I understood. My worst fears had become reality. I was left alone, surrounded by echoes of despair, trapped in the very nightmare I had fought to escape. The forest laughed, a sinister sound that reverberated in my mind, and I felt the last threads of hope unraveling. The shadows danced around me, whispering promises of despair and madness. As I stood in the heart of the darkness, the truth settled in. The fight was never over. I had not conquered my fears, I had merely given them a name. And now I was bound to them, a captive of my own making. The forest loomed around me, an eternal prison of my own nightmares. And as I sank to my knees, I realized that the true horror was not the darkness, but the knowledge that I had become part of it. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. Share with your friends so they can also embark on this mystery-filled adventure. Leave a comment below telling us your favorite part or what kind of ending you'd like to see in a future story. The path ahead was uncertain, but I knew one thing for sure. I would face whatever truth lay hidden within this living labyrinth. The moment my words hung in the air, the figure before me seemed to shift, its form rippling like water disturbed by a stone. I felt a surge of energy crash over me, a wave of emotion that threatened to pull me under. The shadows coiled closer, the scent of damp earth and decay wrapping around me like a shroud. But I stood firm, anchored by the weight of my truth. "Your pain binds you," the entity roared, its voice resonating with a sorrow that echoed through the trees. "It is both a curse and a tether. To know the truth, you must first break free from the shackles of your grief." As it spoke, I felt a sharp pain surge through my chest, as if the forest itself were trying to extract my very essence. I gasped, stumbling back. But Elena caught my arm, her grip steadying me. "Stay with it, Darius. You can do this." Her encouragement ignited a flicker of hope within me. "Tell me how," I shouted, desperation clawing at my throat. "Show me the way!" In response, the entity lunged forward, a dark tendril reaching out to entwine around my wrist. The moment it made contact, visions flooded my mind. Flashes of my father's last moments, the fear in his eyes, the forest swallowing him whole. The pain was overwhelming, but beneath it lay something else, a flicker of understanding. I gritted my teeth, forcing the words out. "I forgive you. I forgive myself." The moment those words escaped, the shadows writhed violently, and the forest erupted in a cacophony of sound. The rustling of leaves, the howling of wind, the cries of spirits long trapped. Suddenly, the oppressive weight lifted, and the figure before me began to dissolve, its sorrowful gaze lingering on me for one last moment. "You have chosen to face your fear. Know this, young one. The past may be buried, but its roots run deep. You must continue to seek the truth." With that, the entity vanished into the mist, leaving behind an eerie silence. I dropped to my knees, gasping for breath, the adrenaline coursing through me. I felt changed, marked by the experience. A scar pulsed on my wrist where the tendril had touched me, a reminder of my confrontation, a reminder of my father. Marcus knelt beside me, his face pale but relieved. "You did it, Darius. You faced it head on." But I could see the shadows of doubt flickering in his eyes. The forest had shifted, but I could sense that our victory was not without cost. The air felt heavy with unanswered questions, and I knew the peace we had sought might only be a temporary reprieve. Elena's voice broke through my thoughts. "What now?" she asked, scanning the trees as if expecting something else to emerge from the darkness. "Is this really over?" I shook my head slowly, the weight of uncertainty settling over me like a fog. "I don't know. The forest still holds secrets, and we've only scratched the surface." As we stood together, the trees whispered around. Us, the shadows, no longer threatening, but watchful, almost expectant. I felt a pull, a sense that our journey was far from finished. There were deeper mysteries lurking beneath the surface, ones that would demand our attention and courage in the days to come. With a final glance at the forest, I turned to Marcus and Elena, determination igniting within me again. We need to uncover the rest of the truth, not just for us, but for those who were lost here. And as we took our first steps back into the depths of the forest, I felt the weight of my scars, both physical and emotional, but also a flicker of hope. The journey ahead would be fraught with danger and discovery, and I was ready to face whatever shadows awaited us. As we ventured deeper into the forest, the shadows stretched long and thin, contorting around us like living things. My heart raced, each step echoing the rhythm of uncertainty. The air crackled with anticipation, and I could feel the weight of the past pressing upon me, reminding me that our victory had not come without a price. "Darius," Marcus said hesitantly, glancing back at the path we'd just traversed. "What if it comes back? What if the entity wasn't really gone?" I swallowed hard, the lingering pain in my chest a stark reminder of the confrontation. "Then we'll face it again," I replied, though my voice wavered. The truth was, I couldn't shake the feeling that the shadows were merely waiting, biding their time, ready to strike when we least expected it. Elena led the way, her determination unwavering, but I could sense her own unease. The forest had transformed. It felt alive, aware of our presence, watching with a predatory gaze. I could almost hear the whispers of the trees, urging us to turn back, to let the past stay buried. Then, a chilling rustle broke the silence, and we froze. "The forest knows your past, Darius, your traumas. It feeds on fear and regrets. You cannot outrun it." My heart raced as memories began to surface. My father's disappearance during a camping trip years ago, the whispered rumors of this very forest, tales of rangers who'd ventured too deep and never returned. I had always dismissed them as folklore, but now they clawed at my mind with a terrifying urgency. "Why do you know about my past?" I demanded, anger mixing with fear. "Because it is intertwined with the fate of this land," the guardian replied, his eyes piercing through me. "You are bound to this place, and it seeks to reclaim what was lost." The realization hit me like a punch. The forest was not just a backdrop to my life. It was a living entity, one that had absorbed my pain, my fears, and now it sought to reveal the truth buried within its roots. Elena stepped closer, her voice steadying. "If we're meant to confront whatever is haunting us, we have to face it together. We can't let it tear us apart." As the shadows converged, cloaking us in darkness, I realized the guardian was right. We were trapped in a web of our own making. The path ahead was treacherous, but I felt an undeniable pull toward the truth. With a deep breath, I steeled myself. "What do we need to do to make things right?" I asked, ready to delve deeper into the enigma that had ensnared us. The guardian smiled, a hint of something almost like relief flickering across his face. "To understand the forest, you must first understand yourselves. Only then can you hope to quell the storm you have awakened." And as the shadows shifted around us, I knew we were on the brink of a revelation that would change everything, if we could survive the night. The guardian's words hung in the air, heavy with implications that pressed against my chest like a vice. I could feel the energy of the forest crackling around us, a storm of emotions that threatened to break loose. My heart raced as I turned to face Marcus and Elena, their expressions mirroring my own turmoil. "Are we really going to do this?" Marcus asked, his voice strained. "What if we're just feeding whatever dark force is lurking in these woods?" "We have to try," I replied, my voice stronger than I felt. "If we run, it will only chase us. We need to confront whatever it is that binds us to this place." Elena nodded, determination flickering in her eyes. "If the forest is as sentient as he says, maybe it can hear us, maybe it can be reasoned with." As we readied ourselves for the confrontation, I felt a surge of energy coursing through me, a connection to the forest that I had never acknowledged before. The ground beneath us trembled again, a reminder that time was running out. "Speak your truth," the guardian urged, his tone firm yet encouraging. "Let the forest know your fears, and it may grant you understanding." In that moment, I knew what I had to do. I stepped forward, feeling the weight of my father's absence like a shroud around me. "I lost my father here," I began, my voice trembling yet resolute. "I've carried that pain for years, convinced I was to blame. I need to know what happened to him. I need to forgive myself." As the words left my lips, the shadows swirled violently, coiling like serpents around us. I felt a presence, thick and oppressive, pushing against my chest. The forest was responding, its energy roiling in a chaotic dance. "Darius!" Marcus shouted, panic creeping into his voice. "It's coming! We have to—" But before he could finish, a figure emerged from the shadows, a silhouette that seemed to shift and shimmer with the forest's very essence. It was both familiar and foreign, an amalgamation of my fears and memories. "Leave this place," it bellowed, a voice echoing with centuries of sorrow. "You have awakened what should remain undisturbed." "No!" I cried, my fear morphing into defiance. "I won't let you control me anymore. I seek the truth, and I will face it." Elena stepped beside me, her own fear transforming into courage. "We're not here to harm you. We want to understand." The entity paused, its form wavering as if unsure of its next move. Marcus, emboldened by our resolve, shouted, "We're not afraid of you. We're here to help." In that decisive moment, I felt the energy shift, a tension crackling in the air as the shadows retreated slightly, revealing the figure's features. It was a reflection of my deepest fears, yet it bore the weight of my father's love, a reminder that I wasn't alone in this battle. As I reached out, my hand trembling, I sensed a choice lay before us: to confront the pain of the past or to allow it to consume us. The forest held its breath, waiting for my decision. "Tell me what I need to do to set things right," I said, my voice steady despite the storm swirling around us. I had dismissed those legends once, but now they felt like a noose tightening around my neck. Just then a low growl rumbled from the shadows, and we turned to find Marcus, our team lead, emerging from the darkness. His expression was a mixture of annoyance and concern. "What are you two doing out here? You're not supposed to wander off." "Marcus, you need to see this," I said, gesturing to the stone circle. "It's not just a random formation. There's something here." "Why?" Stepped closer, squinting at the symbols. "I've seen these before in old texts," he murmured, almost to himself. "They're protective wards, meant to keep something in or out." "What do you mean?" Elena pressed, her voice shaking. Marcus looked at us, his face pale. "There's a reason people don't come here anymore. There are stories of rangers who've come to this spot and never returned. They say it's watched by something ancient, something that doesn't take kindly to trespassers." Fear twisted in my gut, but beneath it lay a flicker of defiance. We couldn't turn back now. I had a responsibility to understand what we had uncovered. "We need to document this," I insisted. "If there's truly something here, we owe it to the forest and ourselves to find out what it is." Marcus shook his head, his voice rising. "You're not thinking clearly, Darius. This isn't a joke. We're out of our depth. We need to leave, now." But before I could respond, the ground trembled beneath us, and the atmosphere crackled with an electric tension. The shadows around the stone circle deepened, coalescing into shapes that flickered like firelight, and I could feel the weight of unseen eyes upon us. The forest came alive with an otherworldly energy, and the whispers I had sensed earlier grew louder, drowning out my thoughts. "Darius!" Helena cried, stepping back, as a figure emerged from the darkness. A tall, gaunt man with wild hair and eyes that glinted like obsidian. "You shouldn't be here," he rasped. "You've awakened them." My heart raced, and a primal instinct urged me to flee. But as I stood frozen, I realized something profound. We were standing on the precipice of a truth that had lingered in the forest for centuries, and there would be no escaping its consequences. "Who are you?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. The man stepped closer, a flicker of urgency in his gaze. "I'm the guardian of this place, and if you wish to leave, you must listen. There are choices to be made, and the forest will not allow you to leave easily." The night had only just begun to unravel its secrets, and I could feel the weight of destiny pressing against my chest. Our next move would either bind us to the forest's dark history or lead us to a path of salvation, hidden within its ancient heart. As the guardian's words echoed in the stillness, I felt a wave of confusion wash over me. My mind raced, grappling with the implications of his presence. "Awakened them?" I repeated, the phrase twisting in my head like a serpent. "What do you mean?" The guardian's gaze shifted to the stone circle, his expression darkening. "This place is a nexus of energy, a threshold between worlds. You've disrupted a balance that's been maintained for centuries. The creatures you've awakened are not merely legends, they are real, and they are hungry." A chill coursed through my veins, and I glanced at Marcus and Elena, their faces reflecting the same mix of fear and disbelief I felt. But beneath that fear, I sensed something else, a flicker of recognition in Elena's eyes. It was as if she understood something I didn't. "Darius," she said, her voice trembling, "I've had dreams, strange dreams about this place, about what's hidden here." She hesitated, glancing at Marcus, who looked equally unsettled. "In those dreams I saw something I thought was just my imagination." "What did you see?" I pressed, feeling a knot tighten in my stomach. "The figure," she whispered, her breath hitching, "the one who guards the forest." I thought it was a manifestation of my fears, but now I wonder if it was a warning. The guardian's eyes narrowed, a flicker of recognition crossing his features. "You are more connected to this place than you realize," he said, his voice low and urgent. "It is calling to you, Elena." Before I could process her connection to this mystery, the ground beneath us trembled again, and the shadows thickened, swirling around us like a storm. I could feel my grip on reality slipping, a dawning realization gnawing at the edges of my sanity. The forest felt alive, sentient, as if it were watching our every move. "Darius," Marcus said, his voice strained. "What if this is all a trick? What if we're losing our minds out here? We need to get out, now!" But the guardian shook his head, his expression grave. "There is no escaping this. My name is Darius. Have you ever stumbled upon a place that seemed to breathe secrets, where the air itself felt heavy with the weight of forgotten stories? On a routine patrol through the Black Hills National Forest in South Dakota, my team and I found ourselves at the edge of an enclave, hidden deep among the thick trees, a place that felt as if it had slipped through the cracks of time. The atmosphere was thick, suffocating almost, filled with symbols that whispered of ancient rituals and a curse that lingered like a shadow. Amidst the murmurs and flickering shadows, we understood one thing. Something terrifically forbidden lay within. From the moment I took on my role as a forest ranger, I believed that every nook and cranny of nature held a tale, a secret waiting to be uncovered. The townsfolk often spoke of dark legends and ancestral curses that wove through the fabric of our land, tales that I dismissed as mere folklore. But standing there, surrounded by the gnarled branches and the pungent scent of damp earth, I realized that what I had heard was not just imagination. This forest, the Black Hills, was alive with stories, and this enclave stood as a grim testament to the truths many had attempted to bury. As we ventured deeper into the enclave, the air shifted, buzzing with an energy that was both mesmerizing and terrifying. Strange markings etched into the rocks caught my eye, symbols that hinted at a pact made with forces long forgotten. It was as if the very ground we walked upon was saturated with the echoes of those who had come before us, their intentions pulsating through the soil. Each discovery felt like peeling back layers of a mystery that had lain dormant for centuries, revealing a past steeped in darkness, one that demanded to be acknowledged. But the deeper we probed, the more unsettling the experience became. Shadows flickered at the corners of my vision, and a chill crept up my spine as I caught whispers carried on the wind, voices that seemed to call my name. The weight of responsibility settled heavily on my shoulders. I felt compelled to uncover the truth, yet I understood that the consequences could shatter the delicate balance of this ecosystem, revealing horrors that might have best remained hidden. The forest, with its towering pines and hidden paths, was no longer just a backdrop. It had transformed into a character woven into the very fabric of our fate. Through all this, memories from my past flooded back, my childhood spent listening to my grandmother's warnings about the woods, her eyes wide with fear as she recounted tales of those who ventured too far and never returned. Her stories danced in my mind like the flickering flames of a campfire, igniting a familiar sense of dread mixed with curiosity. I had always sought to understand the forest, to protect it, but now I was faced with the daunting possibility of becoming part of its haunting narrative. And so, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows that stretched and warped in the twilight, I felt an inexplicable pull toward the heart of the enclave. But when night fell, something inexplicable happened. As the sun vanished, swallowed by the dense canopy of the Black Hills, the atmosphere shifted dramatically. Shadows morphed into elongated figures, and the once familiar sounds of the forest, chirping, crickets, rustling leaves, were replaced by an eerie silence that settled over us like a heavy fog. I exchanged worried glances with my team, each of us aware that our routine patrol had spiraled into something far more sinister. Just then, a rustle in the underbrush drew my attention. From the darkness emerged a figure, Elena, one of the newer rangers. Her eyes were wide, reflecting the fading light, and I could see a tremor in her hands. "Darius!" she called out, her voice laced with panic. "You need to see this!" I followed her deeper into the enclave, my heart racing. As we rounded a massive boulder, I saw what had drawn her. A circle of stones stood before us, meticulously arranged, with what appeared to be remnants of a fire at its center. But it was the symbols carved into the stones that truly captivated me, complex swirling patterns that seemed to pulse with an energy of their own. "I found this just a few minutes ago," Elena said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't think we should be here." Her unease was contagious. I felt it seep into my bones, but curiosity clawed at me. "What do you think it is?" I asked, stepping closer to the circle of stones. "I don't know," she replied, glancing over her shoulder as if expecting something to emerge from the trees. "But I overheard some of the locals talking about this place. They say it's cursed, that it's a gathering spot for something." A chill ran down my spine. I felt the air grow dense, the oppressive weight of something ancient and malevolent creeping back into our midst. The shadows thickened, swirling like a tempest, and suddenly I was struck with the realization that our journey had not reached its conclusion. "Darius!" Elena shouted, her voice a thread in the chaos. I felt the pull of something dark and familiar, and in that moment I understood. The forest would not let us go so easily. It had tasted our fear, and it craved more. As The darkness encroached. I found myself torn between the desire to press forward into the unknown and the instinct to flee. Whatever lay ahead was shrouded in uncertainty, and it felt like the final act of a sinister play where the stage was set for a confrontation that might lead to our undoing. And just like that, the ground beneath my feet trembled, the very roots of the forest awakening. I turned to Marcus and Elena, their faces pale but resolute. We were entangled in a web of fate, and as the shadows danced around us, I knew our story was far from over. Would we find the truth buried deep within the heart of the forest, or would we become another tale whispered among the trees? The answers awaited us, cloaked in darkness. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. Share with your friends so they can also embark on this mystery-filled adventure. Leave a comment below telling us your favorite part or what kind of ending you'd like to see in a future story. My name is Orion. Have you ever felt the weight of shadows pressing against your soul, as if the night itself were conspiring against you? As I made my rounds through Denali National Park, the air thick with the scent of pine and the chill of impending winter, I caught a glimpse of something that belonged to the realm of nightmares. A spectral figure moved silently among the trees, its presence so palpable that it felt as if the very fabric of reality was about to unravel. My heart raced at the thought, what if this was a harbinger of a fate that would entwine itself with my own? Choosing to guard these frozen expanses was a decision born from a desire for purpose, a yearning to connect with the wilds that have been whispering their secrets for centuries. Yet, the legends of an eternal hunter, a spirit doomed to roam. The shadows, forever seeking souls to torment, had always seemed like distant folklore. But that evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the last vestiges of light surrendered to the darkness, those stories morphed into something tangible and terrifying. Each rustle of leaves, every sigh of the wind carried a sinister echo, a reminder of an ancient evil that I could no longer ignore. As the shadow drew closer, my instinct screamed for me to flee, but curiosity rooted me to the spot, compelling me to confront the enigma of this presence that haunted my once peaceful sanctuary. I stumbled upon chilling signs of its existence, icy footprints pressed into the soft earth, unnatural markings etched into the gnarled trunks of ancient trees, and distant cries that seemed to resonate from a time long lost. It was as if the very ground beneath my feet was saturated with the sorrow of countless souls, each one trapped in a cycle of despair. Caught in the grip of fear and fascination, I was torn between the primal urge to escape and the irresistible draw to uncover the truth behind this apparition. What did it want? Why was it here? The whispers of the past danced in my mind, reminding me of a loss I had buried deep within. Years ago, I had witnessed the death of a loved one, a haunting memory that lingered like an unhealed wound. A ghost of its own. Perhaps that was why I was so susceptible to the allure of darkness. Perhaps my heart, so entwined with grief, had unknowingly invited this specter into my life. The shadows around me thickened, the air crackling with tension as the figure loomed nearer. I could feel its gaze piercing through the veil of night, dissecting my very essence. In that moment, I came to a harrowing realization. To face the eternal hunter was to confront not just the specter before me, but the demons I had been running from all along. The uncertainty and dread swirled within me, a tempest of conflicting emotions. Should I stand my ground and unravel this mystery, or would I succumb to the belief that, in this twilight of despair, the shadows would claim me as their own? But when night fell, something inexplicable happened. The wind shifted, carrying with it a whisper that seemed to wrap around my thoughts, urging me deeper into the woods. It wasn't just the spectral figure that loomed in the shadows, it was the weight of my own memories, the pain of loss that had kept me tethered to this place. The air grew colder, and I could feel the presence of the eternal hunter drawing closer, its essence merging with the very fabric of this wilderness. As I wrestled with my fear, a rustle in the underbrush startled me. From the shadows emerged a figure, a woman cloaked in layers of tattered fabric that seemed to blend into the darkness. Her eyes, bright and fierce, locked onto mine with an intensity that sent chills down my spine. "You shouldn't be here," she warned, her voice like the crackle of dry leaves. "This land is cursed. The hunter is not just a myth." "What do you mean?" I managed to stammer, my heart racing. "Who are you?" "I'm Lyra," she replied, stepping closer. "I've been watching you. You're drawn to this curse, aren't you? Like a moth to a flame." Her gaze softened for a moment, and I caught a glimpse of understanding, a shared burden. "You've lost someone, haven't you? That grief, it calls to the shadows." I felt exposed, as if she could see the very core of my being. "How do you know that?" I whispered, a mix of fear and intrigue flooding through me. "The hunter feeds on despair," she explained, her voice low and urgent. "It thrives on the pain of those who linger in this world, trapped by their own sorrow. I've seen it take many forms, each time more insatiable than the last. I thought I could outrun it, but it's always lurking in the corners of my mind." Lyra's confession struck a chord within me. She was not just a secondary character in this unfolding nightmare. She was a reflection of my own struggles. Her vulnerability mirrored my own, and in that moment, I realized I wasn't alone in this darkness. There was a connection between us, a shared quest to confront the shadows that haunted our pasts. "The hunter is coming for you, Orion," she warned, her voice trembling. "You've already caught its attention. Your grief has opened a door, and it wants you to step through." I felt a rush of adrenaline at her words, but also a flicker of hope. Perhaps together we could confront this entity, unravel the threads of fate that bound us to our pain. "What do we do?" I asked, my determination igniting. "We must seek the heart of the forest, where the veil is thinnest," she urged. "There, we can confront the hunter and reclaim what it has taken from us." As we made our way deeper into the woods, I could feel the atmosphere shifting, the air thick with anticipation. The spectral figure danced at the edges of my vision, taunting us. With every step, the chill of despair wrapped around my heart, but Lyra's presence was a beacon, guiding me forward. Yet, as we ventured further, I sensed that the danger was escalating. Strange sounds echoed through the trees, low growls, the snapping of twigs, as if we were being hunted ourselves. My rational mind struggled to make sense of it all, but the growing evidence of the supernatural surrounded us, and I could no longer deny the reality of our plight. Suddenly, a deafening roar erupted from behind us, sending a shockwave of terror through my veins. We turned to face the source, and there it was, the eternal hunter, a monstrous shadow with glowing eyes that pierced through the night. Panic surged within me as I realized our choices had woven us into a tapestry of fate, one where the darkness sought to claim us both. "Run!" Lyra screamed, and in that moment I knew we had crossed a threshold from which there was no turning back. The hunter had come for our souls, and we were about to face the embodiment of our deepest fears. I stumbled backward, the icy grip of fear clawing at my throat as the hunter's menacing form loomed closer. Lyra's scream echoed in my ears, but I couldn't move. I was frozen in place, caught in the gaze of those glowing eyes. Memories surged like a tidal wave, crashing against my mind. My brother's laughter, the warmth of his embrace the day it all shattered. I had buried that pain deep, trying to ignore the guilt that lingered, but now it pulsed to life, a reminder of the darkness I had tried to outrun. "Orion!" Lyra's voice broke through the haze. "We have to go." I shook my head, trying to shake off the weight of my memories. "Wait, I can't." But before I could finish, the hunter lunged forward, its shadowy form coiling around me. In that moment, a bizarre clarity washed over me. I was not just a victim of my own grief, I was the architect of my own despair. The hunter wasn't merely a creature of the night, it was a manifestation of the unresolved pain I had tried to hide. I realized then that my past was intricately woven into this nightmare, and I had to confront it, not just for myself, but for Lyra, too. Lyra, we need to face it together, I shouted, the urgency of my words igniting a flicker of resolve within me. I can't keep running from my past. I need to understand why this is happening. Her eyes widened, a mixture of fear and understanding flickering across her face. You think that will help? The hunter thrives on your pain. It wants you to dwell on your sorrows. I know, I yelled, my voice breaking, but if I don't confront it, it will never let us go. I can't lose you too. With that, I turned to face the hunter, my heart pounding against my ribs. As I felt the weight of my brother's memory pressing down on me, the hunter paused, its glowing eyes narrowing as if it was reading the turmoil within me. The air crackled with tension, and I sensed the shift. The hunter was not just a predator, it was a dark reflection of my own fears and regrets. Lyra, I shouted again, and this time I felt her presence beside me, her determination rekindling my courage. We have to dive into our grief, not run from it. We need to reclaim what it has taken from us. As we stood resolute facing the hunter, I realized that our connection ran deeper than I had imagined. Lyra's own loss mirrored mine. She had been running from her own ghosts. You lost someone too, didn't you? I urged her, feeling the urgency in my chest. We can't let this darkness consume us. We need to unearth our pain together. She hesitated, the flicker of vulnerability in her eyes giving way to a steely resolve. You're right, but if we do this, we have to be ready for the truth, even if it shatters us. With a nod, we stepped forward, ready to confront the hunter together. As we closed the distance, I felt the air shift again, and the hunter's form began to twist, morphing into something familiar. A face emerged from the shadows, one I hadn't seen in years, the face of my brother, a haunting reminder of what I had lost. Orion, the figure whispered, a voice that felt like a dagger to my heart. You abandoned me, I gasped, the weight of the revelation crashing over me. The hunter was not just a creature of nightmares, it was a living embodiment of my guilt and my brother's unresolved spirit. The truth was far more complex than I had imagined, and now I was compelled to face not only the hunter, but the darkest corners of my own soul. Lyra, this is bigger than we thought, I murmured, dread creeping in as the past threatened to consume us both. We have to unravel this together. But as the hunter's form shifted again, I knew we were on the precipice of a revelation that could either liberate us or bind us to our pain forever. I took a deep breath, steadying myself as my brother's face loomed closer, his eyes filled with a mixture of accusation and sorrow. You abandoned me, he repeated, the words echoing not just in the air, but in the very core of my being. Each syllable felt like a stone dropped into a still pond, rippling through the memories I had tried so hard to suppress. No, I shouted, desperation clawing at my throat. I didn't abandon you. But the words faltered, caught in the web of my guilt. I had left him behind in that moment of chaos, paralyzed by fear, while he had faced the darkness alone. Lyra shifted beside me, her presence a comforting anchor. Orion, she urged, her voice a lifeline. Remember the truth. You loved him. This hunter feeds on your guilt, but it cannot take away your love. The hunter's form twisted again, reshaping into the shadows of our shared past. The day my brother had gone missing, the frantic searches, the whispers of despair that had followed. I could feel the weight of Lyra's gaze, urging me to confront the truth. I had buried my feelings under layers of shame and regret, but now I felt them bubbling to the surface, raw and unfiltered. Face it, I cried out, turning to the hunter, my brother's face now a collage of emotions. anger, sadness, a plea for understanding. I didn't choose to lose you. I was scared, and I didn't know how to fight. But I'm here now, and I need you to know that I never stopped looking for you. The air crackled with electric tension, and I felt the hunter's form shudder, the shadows flickering like candlelight. You think your words can absolve you? My brother's voice came, now a haunting whisper. You think facing me will change anything? No. I think it will free us both, I declared, my heart racing as I stepped closer, the shadows of my past swirling around us. I need to let you go, to forgive myself and to forgive you for leaving me with this pain. But I can't do it alone. Lyra moved beside me, her hand gripping mine tightly. Together, she said, her voice steady, we can break the cycle. We are more than our grief. Suddenly, the hunter lunged, and I felt a surge of panic, but instead of retreating, I stood firm, anchoring myself to Lyra's unwavering belief. Show me, I shouted, facing the embodiment of my despair. Show me the truth. In that moment, the hunter hesitated, the shadows flickering as if caught between two worlds. I could feel the swell of emotions rising, the tide of unresolved grief threatening to drown me. But I was no longer afraid. I had chosen my path, and with Lyra by my side, I was ready to confront whatever lay ahead. The shadows shifted, and for an instant I glimpsed a flicker of light within the hunter, a glimmer of hope entwined with pain. Together, I whispered, and as the darkness surged around us, I knew we were on the brink of a revelation that would either shatter our chains or bind us to our suffering forever. The moment the darkness surged, it felt like a wave crashing over me, dragging me into the depths of my own despair. I could sense the energy swirling, pulling me apart and stitching me back together in ways I couldn't comprehend. But I held on to Lyra's hand, feeling her strength grounding me as the shadows enveloped us. In a flash, the hunter unraveled, the embodiment of my brother's pain swirling into a tempest of memories, each one a fragment of our shared history. I saw him as a child, laughing in the sun. I felt the weight of my own fear when the shadows first took him. I was reminded of my failures, the nights spent searching, the guilt that had gnawed at my soul. But amid all of this, I also saw this light, my brother's laughter, his fierce spirit, and the unwavering love that had never truly faded. Orion, the haunting whisper echoed, but it was softer now, tinged with something almost like understanding. You've grown strong, but you still carry the weight of the past. Because I thought I lost you, I shouted into the darkness, my voice a tidal wave of emotion, but I can't carry this burden anymore. In that moment, I felt the shadows begin to recede. The hunter's form flickered, the anger in my brother's eyes softening as he reached out to me, but just as quickly, it morphed back into a whirlwind of grief and rage. I could see that while the confrontation was shifting, the scars of our shared trauma remained, etched into the very fabric of our being. With a final, desperate push, I summoned every ounce of love I had for him. I forgive you, I breathed, knowing the weight of those words would change everything. And I forgive myself. A blinding light erupted from the heart of the storm, illuminating the darkness that had held us captive. In that moment, I felt both free and profoundly changed. The hunter disintegrated, leaving behind only a whispering echo, but the remnants of my brother lingered, a bittersweet presence that would never fully fade. As the light dimmed, I found myself back in our clearing, the air heavy with silence. My body ached, and I could feel the emotional scars surfacing, raw but crucial to my healing. Lyra stood beside me, her expression a mix of relief and concern. "You did it," she said softly, squeezing my hand. "But we're not done yet." I glanced around, noting the stillness that hung in the air. There were no signs of the hunter, but I couldn't shake the feeling that the shadows were merely biding their time. Something remained unspoken, a mystery that lingered just beyond reach. "What about the others?" I asked, suddenly aware of the broader implications of our confrontation. The pain wasn't just ours, It resonated through the community, through those still searching for closure. Lyra's gaze turned thoughtful. If we can face our darkness, perhaps others can too, but we must help them find their way. There are more shadows out there, and not everyone will have the strength we found today. As we stood together, I felt the weight of newfound responsibility pressing on my shoulders. While I had faced my past, the future loomed ahead, uncertain, yet brimming with potential. There were whispers of other hunters, other lost souls waiting to be freed. And I knew that this was just the beginning. With renewed determination, I took a deep breath, ready to embark on a journey that would lead us deeper into the shadows where the truth awaited, along with the promise of healing and the possibility of uncovering new mysteries. Together we would explore the darkness and uncover what lay hidden in the depths, one step at a time. As I stood in the clearing, the remnants of the shadow still clinging to the edges of my thoughts, I felt the weight of the choices looming before me. Lyra's hand still gripped mine, anchoring me, but the path ahead was fraught with peril. We had faced one dark truth, yet I knew that deeper shadows awaited us, shadows that could either heal or destroy. Orion, Lyra's voice trembled, slightly breaking the silence. There's something you need to know. The power we unleashed, it has awakened something far greater than the hunter. The air crackled with tension, and I could feel the ground tremble beneath my feet. I glanced toward the horizon, where two figures emerged from the gathering dusk, each representing a choice laden with consequence. One figure was cloaked in shadow, an echo of my brother's anguish, a path that promised vengeance and the chance to harness the darkness that had tormented us. The other was illuminated, radiant, yet its light was blinding, a path that called for sacrifice, for surrendering what little control I had left. My heart raced as I realized the implications of my choice. If I embraced the darkness, I could gain power, perhaps even resurrect my brother fully. Yet it would come at the cost of my own humanity, spiraling into the very void I sought to escape. Choosing the light, however, meant relinquishing my desires, risking the loss of everything I had fought for, including my connection to my brother. Lyra, what do I do? I choked, my voice barely a whisper. Only you can decide, Orion. Choose wisely. In that moment, the weight of my brother's pain pressed against me, and I felt the foreboding truth. Both choices were steeped in tragedy. I took a deep breath, knowing that whatever path I chose could alter the course of my life and the lives of those around me. Forever. With the world holding its breath, I stepped forward, heart pounding, ready to face the consequences of my fateful choice. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. Share with your friends so they can also embark on this mystery-filled adventure. Leave a comment below telling us your favorite part or what kind of ending you'd like to see in a future story.